Back at it again. So I have my three-tone apple, and I'm going to come in with some of my more refined values here. Still have this open in Photoshop. I can pop it back in if I want to toggle between. It's easier for me to have it side by side, so I'm going to pop it out. Just be aware of which one you have selected. As you can see, I don't have all my beautiful painty layers anymore. I have my photographs, so I'm going to pop back to here. I'm going to save because I've worked hard on this blob and I want to keep it in case my computer does something dumb. And we're going to save it as painting apple. You can save it as whatever you want as long as it's still appropriate. And you want to make sure that's a PSD because we're going to be using lots of layers. And hit save. There we go. All right, so last video I talked a little bit about, I'm going to start bringing the shadows in and sampling some other colors. So this is an interesting color. This is not what you would typically think of when you're painting just a straight up apple. It's kind of this toned down, desaturated brick red. And I'm going to, my pixels are still locked, just come in over here on the side. Now that seems drastic, so I'm actually going to come in with my opacity. I'm going to drop that opacity to roughly 50. Doesn't have to be 50 exactly. And I am still working with the soft round pressure opacity brush. That's the one I like. I honestly don't know that I can train myself not to use that, but you could use that or the soft round. I know Pittman typically had his students stick with the soft round to not get confused, but quite frankly, there are lots of options near and dear to you. I want you to stick with general brushes. Don't venture off into Candyland just yet. You gotta walk before you can run. So I'm coming in with a very light shadow. And as I build up, keep going over it, it's going to get darker and darker. I may have actually gone too dark, in fact. See how that's kind of a grayish? And we're just going to keep going on with a bunch of those colors until we get what we need. Let's sample in here. Same kind of pale, dusty rose up in there. What else? The hard edge is actually bothering me a little bit, so I'm going to come in with a soft brush and soften that up. Make it smaller. And just go around. Actually, if I pay attention with my eyeballs, there's a really bright edge over here. So I'm going to come in and do that. I'm going to unlock my pixels, which I think I already did. And just come in, really zoom in. I'm going to use Command Plus for that so I know I'm getting exactly what I want. Whoops. Same thing over here. Go over here. That way I know exactly what I'm shooting for with that brighter edge. And we're just going to come in. It's kind of a crescent shape, so it's like so. I really like using the opacity tool for blending. You could also use the smudge tool, but you kind of have to be careful because you can get carried away and your form will warp. See what I mean by that? So it can be useful. I would never use my smudge tool at 50%. That's too much. You want it to be gradual. And it does take your computers quite a while to think about it. Even mine, which is a slightly better caliber computer, is thinking real hard anytime I use that smudge tool. So I'm just going to keep lazing along and blocking in colors as I see them with my soft brush or my soft opacity flow brush, which is my beloved. There we go. And I'm just going to keep my eye on what my reference image is showing me. Let's come down here. So we have a color change here. We've got that really strong highlight coming over here. I'm going to crank my opacity up just so I have that stronger edge. I can resample my color because that's no longer the color I'm going for. I'm going for something really bright. So let's make our brush smaller typically. When you're working with highlights, guys, your the brighter you go, the smaller it's going to be. So things like that. Just where that light is really hitting. Up in here. And now I'm going to start to crank my opacity down, make my brush a little bit bigger to give a better blend. Even lower, even bigger. Now up close, it looks like, oh, why would you do that? But as you start to back it off, it makes a little more sense. I could even have more of a transition, so I'm going to just keep following the form, lowering my opacity as I need to, widening my brush. This is the Basham painting method. You might find something that works better for you. Your results may vary. And just really smoothing that out. Okay? So let's jump back over to the shadows. I got distracted. We've got kind of this pale color that bleeds into this very dark, almost burnt looking color. So let's come over here. I'm going to crank my opacity back up because this is too dark comparatively. Keep in mind you do not have to lock your pixels, my friends. That is a preference of mine. Make that smaller. And it just seems like it should be lighter, so I'm going to sample again. Okay, so that's what we have now. Let's come in with that one. And just kind of come around. Change your brush size as need be. I think I am going to lock my pixels. Nope, that's not it. Lock it like it's hot. Lock it like it's hot. And just coming in. And if this is truly bothering me, which it is, I'm going to add some white over it because it just doesn't visually look the same to me at all. We've got this really nice bit of texture up here. And yeah, let's tackle that. So I've got some white. I'm going to lower the opacity a bit. I'm definitely going to want a soft brush for this. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And I'm going to start to... Oh, that's too much. Too shiny. That's a fake apple. Come down to 33%. And I'm just going to take my brush and kind of make these short strokes clustered together that I can eventually blur. Brush a little bigger. And I want some of that weird dusky color peeking through. Can come in with my smear tool, smudge. Just give your computer time to think if you use this, for the love of God. And go in small sections. Could probably bump my strength up just a touch. That's more like what I want. See how it's boogieing while I've moved on to my life up here? So we need to make a nicer transition here. So I'm actually going to sample my original color and drop the opacity of it to blend over here. So let's do that. That's better. That's looking much better. So I'm really excited about this dark blotch for some reason. So we're going to come in and start to do that. Same thing. Soft round brush. We're going to start with full opacity, see where that gets us. I could come down and do some of that white that I'm missing, but we'll come back to that. You'll notice when I paint, I jump around a lot. Your results may vary. We're going to really crank the size of this and drop the opacity because that seems really dark. And then as I layer it, I can match more of that dark bit. Come in with that bright red. You're really just dancing around with colors and smushing them together until they do what you want them to. I have a very layered paint style. So it's not by any stretch finished, but we're starting to see some of those color chunks that we're going to be able to work with. Too dark, too dark. You could also use the blur tool to kind of blend some of your colors where they're leaking into other colors, like so. You don't get as much of a hard boundary, which is not what we want. We want it to kind of like blend into each other, so to speak. And here's where the smudge tool can go wrong. Don't do this. One, it takes forever. Two, it messes with the shapes of your blocking. And it's going to take me forever to undo this. But see how that's doing all kinds of things that maybe it shouldn't. Want that nice round blocking. All right. This is a good place to stop. We'll pick up in the next video.